Chapter 497, The Wall of Rewards. After the talk about the legends of treasures that had inspired generations of adventurers to go to sea came to an end, the cook had also finished roasting the flesh of the murloc's belly. They were white after being cooked, charred a little black, and covered with tiny brown particles that glistened with a moist, oily glow. The repeated smearing of seasonings had already seeped into the texture of the meat, effusing it with a tantalizing visual effect. Daisy grilled fish, it's different from how you usually eat it. Elend pointed at the white porcelain plate the cook lowered. Donna held her fork and knife and eagerly said, I love honey-roasted fish. But this is also very appetizing. Honey-roasted fish? How much honey would that take? If I have a chance to try it, the taste should be pretty good. Klein allowed his imagination to run wild. With a chef, there was no need for them to serve themselves. They could only look on expectantly as pieces of fish were sliced, placed on different plates, and served in front of them. Klein was very serious when it came to tasting delicacies, so he was in no hurry to deal with the fish. Instead, he took a sip of black tea and used the slightly sour liquid to clear his mouth of any remaining flavors. After doing all of this, he forked a piece of fish and stuffed it into his mouth. In a split second, he felt the slightly stimulating flavors of fennel, basil, and other spices. They were sufficient enough to help him open up one taste bud after another. Immediately after, the delicious juices of the meat, the slightly astringent taste of the sea salt, and the refreshing, sour, and sweet taste of lemon all burst out at the same time, filling his oral cavity and making his mouth water. As he chewed, the last bit of the fish meat's stubbornness was broken off one by one after having its fat roasted out of it, fully presenting the splendor of the meat, as well as its faint sweetness. Swallowing the fish in his mouth, Klein recalled a delicacy program he had watched in his previous life and chose the evaluation line that matched what he just felt. The layered flavors are very clear, excellent. Haha, your tone and words make you sound like a gourmet, Ellen joked. Donna waved her fork and echoed, Uncle, perhaps you should write a column in the newspaper about different restaurants and different cuisines. Why didn't I think of this idea? This is a good job that can earn me money, as well as allowing me to taste delicacies. The only problem is that an obese man can't be a flexible clown. Use the great art of spewing vomit? What a waste of food. Klein seriously considered Donna's suggestion. To a beautiful night. When there was very little food left, Elend poured himself some more of the Sonia blood wine and raised his glass with a ruddy face. Klein and the others echoed in similarly good moods, to a beautiful night. They drank the rest of the liquids from their glasses and watched the waiter clear the table and clean the deck. They talked for a while more amidst the cold wind, talking about the mermaids that Donna was most interested in. Cleves told the young lady that, in some legends, mermaids were also called sirens, and they used their songs to confuse humans not for entertainment, but for hunting. Aside from the possibility of encountering these creatures on the sea route from the Gargas archipelago to the depths of the Sonia Sea, there was a certain chance of discovering it in dangerous seas that haven't been explored by humans. However, all of this stemmed from the drunken boasting of certain pirates, and they all avoided the question of how they escaped from the mermaids' songs, which made it highly suspicious. No matter what, this at least points me in a possible direction. Klein took note of what they had discussed. Donna, Denton, it's time to go back. You'll have to get up early tomorrow and have breakfast with your parents. Cecile looked at the moon's position. Fine, Donna stood up reluctantly. Denton hurriedly asked, Do I have a chance at becoming an adventurer? His mind had been captivated by the previous hunt and the legends. Cleves walked to his side, patted his shoulder, and said, Before you ask this question, you need at least 5 years of combat training and studying. I think your father will hire a good tutor for you. Yeah, Denton's eyes lit up, and he nodded vigorously. After 5 years, the adult you probably won't want to be an adventurer who can find himself buried at the bottom of the sea at any time. Cleves' handling of the situation was very shrewd. He didn't immediately refuse him, but rather he gave him hope and let time wash away his interest. This prevents the child from becoming suddenly rebellious. Regardless, mastering a fighting technique is always beneficial for anyone. Klein put his hands in his pockets and thought with appreciation. On the way back to the interior of the cabin, Cleves handed 2 5-pound notes to Klein. "Your payment." He had just received £150 from Ellen's purchase of the whole Murloc. "I didn't do anything," Klein instinctively refused. Cleves glanced at him with his pale blue eyes and said in a low voice, "You freed up Cecile and took good care of the children." Took good care of the children. Klein was somewhat amused, but he finally took the 2 bills and drew a triangle on his chest. "You're more generous than I thought, thank you." He stopped declining because he suddenly figured out something. If he hadn't accepted the £10, then in the eyes of a veteran adventurer like Cleves, it would appear as though he was dissatisfied with the price and was attempting to get more, making it possible that he would attack them at any time. Among self-proclaimed adventurers, there was definitely no lack of greedy madmen. Seeing J.M. and Sparrow pocket the money, Cleves looked away and said flatly, "This is a rule of the sea." Without another word, he followed Cecile, Donna, and company into the cabin. "If I could get such rewards with every single mission and job of this difficulty, then I would have long made a fortune with my job as a private detective." Klein gave a self-deprecating laugh and turned his head to look at the red moon hanging high in the sky. It still shone quietly and gently in the night. Legends of the sea, different monsters. I've finally found the slight feeling of being an adventurer. Klein turned around and walked to the edge of the ship. Bathing in the crimson veil, he admired the waves that were growing darker. Gradually, his mood settled as he walked out bit by bit from the gloom of Backland's great smog. The cold, damp wind slapped his face, and the vast, endless ocean caught his eye, opening up his heart. For a moment, Klein felt the urge to sing, but when he opened his mouth, he found that he couldn't remember the corresponding modern verses. "I can't just end up saying, 'Oh, sea, you're all water.' The Emperor's savant sequence is really well suited to doing such things. When I have the time, I should read through his poems so as to not look like illiterate." Klein lampooned as he looked at the red moon and the ocean before sighing. What a beautiful night. After an accidental episode of getting lost, the exploratory team returned to the City of Silver. Looking at the wall's cracks filled with weeds, Derek found himself in a trance, as if he had been gone for many years. Diagonally behind him, Demon Hunter Collins' eyes suddenly wore a lost look as he raised his hand to press on his right temple. The rest of the team members were filled with joy and relief from the bottom of their hearts. After a difficult exploration, having a home waiting for them was the happiest thing in their hearts. Collins' gaze returned to normal as he turned his head to the side and looked diagonally ahead. Backland, the White family. After some thought, the confident Lin came up to his parents and asked, "If I wanted to delve into the history of us Sanguine, who would I look for? If I were to ask about the City of Silver directly, it's very likely that I'll be exposed for being problematic. Although I'm not afraid and very calm, for the ancestor and in order to save the entire Sanguine race, I have no choice but to hide it. I've always been interested in the history of Sanguine. I've collected a lot of information, and father and mother know that, so I wouldn't be suspected in any way. This excuse is perfect." Emlyn praised himself inwardly. He resembled his father to a certain extent. He wore gold-rimmed glasses that made him look very professional. The gentleman, who had got his doctorate in medicine, put down the thick anatomy book in his hands, nudged his glasses, and said, "No one in Backland knows more than Lord Nibs. If I dared to seek Lord Nibs, I would have long done so." Emlyn thought of Mr. Fool's description of him being a messiah that had to bear the burden of a secret while being misunderstood, as he pressed with a solemn expression, "Aside from Lord Nibs. He's sleeping underground, so it's not convenient for him to be disturbed." Emlyn's father pulled up the collar of his thick cotton pajamas and thought for a moment. Waymondy, he always thinks of himself as a historian. Emlyn heaved a sigh of relief and smiled. "I wish to visit him." "Well." The whistle sounded, and the White Agate sailed into Daymere Harbor. It would replenish fresh food and water on the colonial island and set sail again the next morning. After hunting the Murloc, Klein spent the next 2 days of what could be described as a leisurely or boring life. He was completely bored by the scenery of the sea, and he decided to head to the harbor's bar to look around that very night, hoping to get more information on mermaids and inspiration for acting. If I were to come across a pirate whose hands are stained with blood on shore, I wouldn't mind teaching him a lesson. There are still souls waiting to be released from creeping hunger. Klein's forehead sweated as he equipped himself with all his mystical items as he left his cabin before heading down to the harbor. During this process, he met Donna, Cleves, and the others. They seemed to be heading over to a port restaurant to taste Damir's most famous cured meat. Donna and Denton greeted the adventurer, whom they had just gotten to know without their parents noticing, and seemed curious as to where he was going. Klein smiled back, pulled up his collar, and, following the directions of the sign, found the nearest bar. Flying Fish and Wine. Klein looked at the signboard and saw that the outside of the bar was plastered with bounty notices. Among them were the 800,000 pounds belonging to the King of the Five Seas and more than 100 pounds for the common pirate captain. This formed a unique landscape that ranged from the highest to the lowest. It's all money. Klein stood on the spot and looked at it for a long time. He withdrew his gaze, pushed open the door, and entered the bar, only to find that it was abnormally quiet. It didn't have the din that such places came equipped with. What happened? Klein looked around and saw Captain Elland, in a dark red coat, sitting at the bar, as well as two large men in the middle of the room, facing each other.